Welcome back, everyone, to the 38th night here on Uncle Three's Ghost Storytelling channel. Tonight, I've got a truly special tale for you, one that involves the departed seeking justice from beyond the grave. This story comes all the way from the Philippines, sent to me a while ago by the man who lived it, Daniel. He's our main character and witness, now living in Texas, USA, though he originally hailed from the West Visayas region of the Philippines. Back in those days, life in West Visayas was pretty tough, Daniel told me. But amidst the hardships, he found love with a girl named Nina. They were the very definition of childhood sweethearts. And they had known each other since they were kids. Their families were close, and their love blossomed as they grew up. Their bond was deep, a true soulmate kind of love. Yet, like so many tragic romances, their story took a bitter turn. Daniel's family was poor, and Nina's parents, hoping for a brighter future for their daughter, wanted her to marry someone rich. It was a classic Romeo and Juliet situation. A heartbreaking tale of love denied by circumstance. Since they couldn't be together, Daniel and Nina decided to have one last meeting, a final farewell. They chose a spot under a magnificent, flower-laden Narra tree, a familiar and beautiful landmark in their hometown. Daniel was preparing to move to America, which made the breakup a practical necessity. Surprisingly, their parting wasn't filled with gut-wrenching despair. They said their goodbyes relatively peacefully. Within about a year, Daniel had all his papers and his entire family packed up and moved to the United States. For a solid decade after that, Daniel lost all contact with Nina. He didn't call or reach out to her family, partly because his own family had no relatives left in that rural area. When they left for good. Life went on for Daniel in the States. He eventually got married, but it didn't work out, and he divorced. By then, he'd built a good life for himself, doing well financially. And with that stability came a longing, a deep desire to revisit his homeland. His purpose was crystal clear. He wanted to find Nina. He wondered if she was happy and what her life had become. So Daniel returned to his old village in the Philippines. He found the majestic Narra tree still standing, a silent sentinel of their past. But much else had changed. Daniel's childhood home was gone, paved over to make way for a new road. Nina's house, too, had been torn down and rebuilt. The old landscape was gone, vanished, save for that enduring Narra tree. Thankfully, some of the older folks in the village still remembered Daniel's family. Younger generations didn't recall him or his family. It had been too long. But when Daniel mentioned Nina's name, almost everyone in the small village knew her. Why was she so well known? The reason, Daniel soon discovered, was utterly heartbreaking. Just 2 nights after Daniel left for America, Nina had hanged herself from that very Narra tree. Daniel was utterly blindsided. He couldn't comprehend why. He racked his brain. Why would Nina take her own life? He thought perhaps she loved him so much she couldn't bear to be without him. But as he replayed their last conversation under the Narra tree, he remembered their peaceful parting. Yes, she was sad, but there was no indication of such profound despair that would lead to suicide. So why, just 2 days later, did she hang herself there? Daniel started asking questions. Villagers told him the police had investigated, taken her body down, and a funeral had been held. But there was a strange detail. Nina's family held the funeral for only 1 day. and buried her immediately. That struck Daniel as odd, a detail that didn't sit right. Disturbed by this, Daniel decided to stay another night in a local hotel, hoping to reflect on old memories. He also planned to visit Nina's grave the next morning. It wasn't near the Narra tree, but on a plot of land across the river. That night, as he drifted off to sleep, something truly eerie happened. As I've always said, a soul that dies unjustly holds immense power. Daniel saw Nina's spirit appear before him. She sat right on the edge of his bed. In his half-sleep, he looked up, startled. He rubbed his eyes, and she was gone. But he felt it, a familiar warmth, not a chill, and the faint scent of her hair, carried on the breeze from the window. He tried to rationalize it, convincing himself it was just a hallucination, a trick of his mind longing for his lost love. But deep down, he knew it was real. Nina had truly returned that night. He lay there, slipping into a deep, vivid dream. In this dream, Nina reappeared, sharing her heart and weeping bitterly. Around her neck, Daniel saw a deep mark, but it wasn't from a rope. It was the distinct imprint of 5 fingers. She looked at him, crying profusely. Daniel, heartbroken, asked her, "Why did you die? Why did you foolishly take your own life? Your whole life was ahead of you." And then, Nina revealed the chilling truth. "I didn't commit suicide," she sobbed. "I didn't take my own life. That night, because I refused to marry the man my family was forcing on me, my own father killed me. He then hanged me from the Narra tree." Daniel jolted awake, the dream's horrifying revelation echoing in his mind. How can a dream feel so real, he thought, just like the days we were still together? Then, suddenly, tears started streaming down his face like rain. The very first thing Daniel did the next morning was to seek out the villagers and ask about Nina's parents. Where had they gone? It was then that a local told him something else peculiar. The day after the funeral, Nina's father had been insistent on immediate burial, despite the priest advising a 3-day waiting period. And then, right after the burial, he packed up and left the village the very next day. Back then, people had simply assumed the parents were too heartbroken to stay. But Daniel knew better now. He was determined to uncover the full truth. That very day, he went straight to the Philippine police. He laid out the entire story, explaining his suspicions, convinced that what he'd learned was real. Interestingly, the police officers weren't just by the book. They were also quite spiritual. Upon hearing Daniel's account, they dispatched 2 officers to accompany him to Nina's grave. What they found there was truly shocking. Nina's grave was heavily waterlogged, practically falling apart. It was clear no one had tended to it, cut the grass, or made any repairs for many, many years. The sheer neglect raised immediate red flags for the police. Why would Nina's living parents completely abandon their daughter's resting place? Looking at the grave, they could tell it hadn't been touched since it was built, overgrown with weeds. Daniel had been gone for nearly a decade, further confirming the long-term neglect. With this new evidence, Daniel and the Philippine police launched a full investigation to track down Nina's parents. They hadn't moved far, just to the neighboring province. When the police arrived at their home and began questioning them, it wasn't long before Nina's mother broke down and confessed. She recounted the terrible night. Nina and her father had a furious argument. Nina had been defiant, disrespectful. In a fit of uncontrollable rage, her father had wrapped his hands around her throat and strangled her. He hadn't meant to kill her, but he'd lost control. Then, gripped by terror at the thought of going to prison, Nina's father concocted a horrific plan to stage her death as a suicide. He took a rope, tightened it around Nina's neck, and hung her from the Narra tree. The village, already aware of Daniel and Nina's deep love, had easily fallen for the deception, believing Nina had taken her own life out of heartbreak. But now, the full, gruesome truth was finally out. As for Nina's father, for a decade, he knew no peace. Not a single night passed that he truly slept soundly. He would frequently talk in his sleep, mumbling pleas like, "Forgive me, my child. Forgive me. Don't do this. I didn't mean to." He became what people called mildly insane, drifting between lucidity and delusion. He could still work and earn money, but when he had his episodes, he would ramble incoherently about accidentally killing his daughter. People just dismissed him as a madman, oblivious to the terrible secret only he and his wife shared. When the whole truth finally came to light, Nina's father faced justice. He was sentenced to life imprisonment for the murder of his own daughter, a verdict that sent shockwaves through the entire village. Daniel stayed in the Philippines, following the case until Nina's father received his sentence. But even with justice served, something profound lingered. During his time there, Daniel told me that not a single night had passed without Nina's spirit returning to him. She never spoke, never uttered a word. She would simply sit on the edge of his bed, gazing at him and smiling. Daniel described it as a strange mix of feelings. He felt both a profound happiness to see her and an undeniable fear at her constant presence. Before Daniel returned to America, he sought the counsel of a local psychic. The psychic explained that Nina had died unjustly, her life cut short. Because she was murdered by her own father, and her physical body had been submerged in water, a reference to her severely waterlogged grave, coupled with the tragic circumstances of her love and fate. Her soul couldn't find peace and couldn't move on. The psychic warned Daniel that if this spiritual link wasn't severed, Nina's spirit would follow him to America, which would be very dangerous. Daniel was faced with a difficult choice. He was torn, asking if such a ritual would harm Nina's soul. The psychic reassured him. "I will perform an exorcism," he explained, "but a humane one. It will be a negotiation. A conversation with Nina to help her understand, to guide her to heaven, so she can be reborn in another life. It's not about harming her spirit in any way." Daniel, after much deliberation, agreed. After the ritual was performed, Daniel told me he had never seen Nina's spirit again. He finally returned to the United States. Daniel, a regular viewer of Uncle Three's YouTube channel, wanted me to share his story on his behalf. A profoundly sad tale of lost love, betrayal, and a spirit seeking justice, forever entwined with the narrative of their shared, shattered past. What do you all think of this story? Let me know in the comments below. If you connected with it, please subscribe and share so this story can reach even more people. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And I'll see you for night 39.